Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. I'm also excited to share my book, Straight from the Admissions Office, a review of my biggest takeaways from the first few hundred podcast episodes. It's packed with direct insights from admissions professionals and practical tips to help students and their families navigate the college admissions process. You can find all of the information in the show notes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to episode 300. Never in a million years did I think I would actually make it to 300 episodes, but here we are, and we have two very special guests for you today. We have Laurie Wax, who's the Director of New York Recruitment for Penn State University. Now, Laurie was here specifically to talk about Penn State during episodes 9 and again for episode 252. She was also on a panel commemorating our 50th episode. So again, she was on episode 50. And I also want to welcome back Kate Anderson, who's the Associate Director of Admissions at SUNY Oswego. Kate was here for episodes 15 and again on 271 specific to SUNY Oswego. She also did episode 58 where we talked about the common application. Laurie, Kate, I am so grateful for your support and friendship over the years and mentorship. Thank you so much for coming back. How are you?
Oh, we're great. Thank you so much for having us again, John. We're so excited to talk to you about the college essay.
Absolutely. It's great to be back. Thanks so much.
It is our honor and pleasure. And as Laurie mentioned, episode 300, we're going to make it specific to the college essay. So let's get right to it. Laurie, we're going to start with you. What role does the college essay play in the overall admissions process, and how does it influence your decision-making when reviewing applications?
You're going to get different answers to that question depending on the schools that you speak to, but the college essay definitely is something that can impact your application, and usually in a positive way. The first and foremost thing that we look at Penn State is, and really any university, is looking at your academic record, the classes that you took, the grades that you received in those classes. But then when we're reading applications, many times we have more applicants than we're able to admit. And sometimes when you're kind of not sure about an applicant or you're on the fence, an essay is definitely the thing that can put you over the edge. Many schools have what they call a holistic review. We have, to some extent, a holistic review where we're looking at all the different pieces of the application. The thing about the college essay is that it is the one piece of the application that we are hearing your voice, that you're telling your story. So while at some schools it's going to be a more important aspect than others, at Penn State it is optional, but it is highly encouraged. And it is definitely something that, all things being equal, it could be something that definitely moves you into the yes pile. It's our opportunity to get to know you.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie. And Kate, anything to add regarding the role of the essay?
Well, everything Laurie said is perfect. I mean, really, I think a lot of times students feel like admissions is only about numbers, and it's not. As Laurie said, there's a holistic review. Every part of the application is important, but certainly essays can push you in either direction. A poorly written essay is not going to help your application, but a very well-written essay, or an essay where you really jump off that screen, jump off the page, can help you. I think the point of the essay, as much as many students dread writing it, is that we want to see your writing ability. That ability to communicate well and effectively is very important in college, no matter where you go to school. So we want to see an example of your best writing. That said, this is not constrained writing. You really have freedom to write about whatever you want, and you can be as creative as you want or as structured as you want. I mean, it is a blank slate, and students, that may be hard to figure out, but it's also a great opportunity. So we want to see how well you write and communicate, but what are we asking you to write about? I always say, are we asking you to write about, quantum mechanics or nuclear physics? No, what do you write about? You write about the thing that you are the world's biggest expert on, and that is yourself. It's telling us something that we're not going to see in some other part of the application.
Well, that's such a great overview. And I like what you said that essays could pull you in either direction. And one of the things that students and their families are always concerned about are, the common mistakes that you guys find on those college essays. So we're going to start with you, Kate. Can you share some common mistakes you see in college essays? And what do you recommend students avoid?
Oh, we could spend a lot of time in the essay don'ts. There are some pitfalls, and we see them. Remember, I read between 2,000 and 2,500 applications every year, so we see a lot of essays. I think a lot of the mistakes, well, students sometimes try to be too fancy. They try to use those big words, and really they should just use nice, normal words, because when they start relying on a thesaurus, which, you can right click and get words that mean similar things, but they're not always the right word. And so you'll get these funny wrong words they're used, or words that are just out of context. I often talk about this as an example from our friend and colleague Suzanne Miller at Geneseo. There was a student who, instead of just saying, when my father came home, the essay said, when my father perambulated home. And that's just not a word. You should just use normal words that you would use anyway. If you don't really use it ever, or you don't understand it, don't use it. So you need to proofread, and that means more than just spell check. Because if you rely on spell check, you get words that are words, but they're not the right words. So the stock market came up as stock market, STALK. It's a word. It's not the right word. I think we'll be talking about AI in another question, but there really is so much we can talk about here. I want to end on another positive note, which is that a lot of times students feel they're not okay feeling like they're bragging. But let us tell you, this is the place you want to celebrate your accomplishments or tell us special things about yourself. So that's also something to avoid.
Well, I appreciate that. Number one, don't be too fancy, student, or use those words out of context that are really not sounding so much like a 17-year-old. And of course, brag, brag, brag. So we appreciate that, Kate. And Laurie, anything else to add in terms of common mistakes that you're seeing?
Well, I don't know that it's so much of a mistake as much as, you don't know who's reading your essay. You don't know anything about the person reading your essay. So you want to be very careful not to show any kind of bias or, just be offensive in any way. It's also always really great to be positive. It's not the place, if you were angry at your parents, it's probably not the place to let us know that yet. Sometimes that is what I read. And if it weren't for my parents doing this, I would have done this. And you have one shot to speak to us. And so I would just say use it well. If I'm sitting down with you and saying, tell me about yourself, here's your chance to tell me about yourself. I think sometimes people think that they have to have had some catastrophic experience in order to write a great essay. And that could not be farther from the truth. Some of the best essays that we read are just very ordinary events in a student's life, Sunday dinners with their family, their commute to school. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be anything, extreme. We're just trying to get to know you. So just really talk about yourself and be positive about yourself and be positive about others.
And also avoid acronyms. That's something I didn't mention. People will talk about something, the award they got, and it's all these initials, and I have no idea what that is, and I don't have the time to go look up what those letters mean. So that is definitely something to avoid.
Well, that's great advice in terms of the acronyms. And Lori, going back to what you said, you have one shot. You don't know who's reading your essay. And nowadays, at least, it is a human being. We know that much, right? It is a human being reading the
It's
essay, and you know
definitely
who that
human
person
being.
is. So you want to stay positive and don't be biased in a college essay, right? That personal statement. So I think that's great. And of course, students and their families also want to hear about key elements that you're looking for. So we're going to start with you, Lori. What are some key elements that really make a college essay stand out to you guys, the admissions officers? And can you share one that really resonated with you?
I mean, there are a few that I think always stand out. And for me personally, they're always the ones that are positive, that manage to, whatever the experience, whatever they're writing about is, to have a positive twist to it. I mean, there are some topics that we see frequently, like people write about grandparents, people write about, sporting injuries. And, that's okay. You don't have to always write about something different, but it should always come back to talking about you. So I think the thing that we're looking for is that I am going to learn something about you in your essay. And that's really what stands out. I mean, I remember reading an essay from a student whose parents were divorced, and she managed to see the positive. She talked about the two worlds she lived in. And, some days she was living in this wonderful world and the next time in that wonderful world. And the impression I had from that student was that here's somebody who really looks at the glass half full, and somebody who's always managing to make lemonade out of lemons. And so that was what I got out of that essay. And I think just really it's a chance for us to hear your voice and see something about you that we're not going to be able to tell anywhere else.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Laurie. And the topic of speaking about a grandparent and a sports injury, those are the two themes that come up time and time again on the podcast episodes in terms of the most commonly used topics. So, I think it was you, Kate, that said you read over 2,000 applications. So think about that, students. Think about the number of personal statements that admissions representatives are reading, right? You don't want to sound like a lot of other kids. And we've heard it so many times, the essay about the grandparent and the sports injury. And the problem, too, is that the essay about the grandparent, many times, 90% of it is about the grandparent and not too much about you, the student. And so going back to the points that they said earlier, if someone reads your essay and they haven't learned anything new about you, it truly is a missed opportunity. Kate, anything else you want to add in terms of common mistakes that you're seeing in college essays?
And trends. Absolutely. That is something to avoid, is spending so much time that you don't get to bring the essay back to yourself, and we don't end up learning about you, which is part of this drafting process. You're not going to sit down and write a perfect essay in your first go. You're going to have to rework it. So you don't stress about the word count initially, but you're going to want to make sure that you've accomplished all that you set out to do. There are trends. Last year I read a lot of Taylor Swift essays. This year, I'm reading a lot about Legos and phones. But I read two great phone essays. I mean, who doesn't have a smartphone? Well, one of them was, the essay was written from the perspective of the phone being left at home or left in a bag when the student was in calculus, and it was really, really funny and clever. One I read today, a student broke his phone and switched to his grandmother's flip phone, and talked about how he'd saved something like 1,900 hours that he'd been able to put towards much more productive things than doom
Wow.
scrolling. It was great. It was fun. I think one of my all-time favorites, and I probably talked about it on this podcast, was an essay that really just grabbed me from the first line. And I think if you can grab your reader right away, that's really a home run. But the first line of the essay said, "I am so envious of shrimp." And I read a lot of essays, and I've never read a first line like that. And it turned out that the student was an artist and loved color, and said that shrimp eyes see something like 17 times the number of colors as human eyes. So it was just great. I love to learn something in an essay. I really learned a lot about that person, and I thought it was highly creative.
Well, that's awesome. And it goes to what you were saying earlier. Regardless of the topic, make sure you're bringing the essay back to you. Give the essence of who you are. Again, they have to learn something new about you. And don't forget, make it about you. Now, in terms of choosing an essay topic, and we've heard so many topics here today, but also on the podcast episodes, one student who wrote about a dining room table and how the dining room table talked about how conversations that the family had at that table evolved over the years. Another student talked about a parent driving them to school and how those conversations evolved from when he or she was in elementary to now being in high school. So in terms of choosing an essay topic, how should students choose a topic for their essay? And are there specific themes or experiences that really resonate well with everyone in the admissions office? Kate, we'll start with you.
Well, the good news is that the essay prompts for the Common Application do not change very often. In fact, they are exactly the same for 2026 as they were for 2025. But remember, these are prompts. They're not questions with specific answers. So good advice is just to read them over before you go to sleep, and you will be, some part of your brain is just thinking about that. You'll get an idea at some point, jot it down, take some notes on your phone. When the muse strikes, just take advantage of that and know that your first draft you may end up switching topics, and that's okay. Try anything that seems like a good start. When you're at a loss, you ask your friends and family, because a lot of times other people have very, very clear ideas about things that make you very interesting or unique or something you're talented about. So don't hesitate to ask for advice. I think a lot of the very popular prompts are questions 1 and 6, which really have to do with things that you love. I think if you sat down for 1 minute and wrote down things that you love, any one of those would make a great essay. Cooking, horses, but whatever it is, computers. It doesn't have to be why you want to go to college. Anything that you're really interested in, you're probably going to write about in a really engaging way. And as long as you can bring it back to helping us learn something about you, it'll be a successful essay.
Oh, we appreciate that, Kate. Laurie, anything you want to add?
I always recommend write 3 different things down. Don't put the pressure on yourself to pick the topic. Write about anything you're considering, because eventually one of those topics is just going to kind of more easily flow into an essay than the others. And even if you write several different essays, the likelihood is that you'll have an opportunity to use at least some version of that extra essay somewhere else. So just write different things. The other thing that not really about topic, but we always like to add is that there are definitely word counts for each of these essays, and you do have to stay within that word limit. It will get cut off if you don't, but the time to worry about the word count is not while you're writing. The time to worry about that is after you've completed your essay. It is always easy to go back and try to cut things. If you worry about it while you're writing, you might not flow as easily as you would if you're just writing.
Well, I appreciate that. And it goes to the fact that, good writing is really reflecting and then rewriting. So you're talking about coming up with different themes, different topics, and over time, see what really sticks, what resonates. And maybe, as you put it, you'll take pieces from different parts to ultimately come up with that essay that's going to really help you to stand out. So that's awesome. So many people get confused between the personal statement and supplemental essays wherever colleges and universities ask for those supplemental essays. So we're going to start with you, Laurie. Could you explain the difference between, again, that personal statement and the supplemental essays, and how should students approach each?
Great question. They're both important. They're both really important. The Common App essay is the one essay that you're sending to everyone. And that's really your chance to talk about anything that's important to you, either talking about yourself, what you love, an obstacle you've overcome. Any of the prompts will help you talk about something that's all about you. The supplemental essays, on the other hand, have very specific prompts. You don't usually have choices of prompts. And they are equally important as the personal statement to the schools that do ask for them. They're trying to gain insight into maybe a way you think or priorities that you have. I know that at Penn State, we have one optional supplemental essay. I always say, nothing is really optional. I mean, look at it as an opportunity. Any opportunity that you have to distinguish yourself, to talk more about yourself. There are lots of different topics I've seen on supplemental essays. I've seen one that was, what is your favorite word and why? Tell us about a community that you're a part of and why it's important to you. I've also seen, your life is, your essay is your autobiography. Tell us about page 168. But by far the most common supplemental essay is going to be, why do you want to come to this college? Sometimes it might be, why do you want to do your major? But either way, those are really golden opportunities to really say, why do you want to go to this college? And a lot of times that's a way for school to see, how interested you are, why you really do want to go there. And it's the easiest question to answer, really. Use resources if you've visited the school, and you take notes when you visit school so that you can say, why did I love that school? Go onto the website, take advantage of all of the information on the website. Is there a specific professor that you'd love to do research with? Are there courses you'd like to take? Is there a club that you'd like to join? You don't want to just say, well, it's, got a pretty campus and a good football team. You really want to be specific about what you would take advantage of at the school, what you would bring to the school, and why you want to be there. So I definitely think if you have that opportunity, take advantage of it. Don't wait till the last minute. They also require time. So you spend a lot of time on your Common App essay, and then the supplements kind of come later. But you can find out as soon as the Common App opens up, you can go on and see what the supplemental essays are. So you can be thinking about them for a period of time. There are times when students do a little bit of cutting and pasting, and that is fine. You're busy. There are a lot of essays to be written. You may have some things that you can just replace the professor or the club or whatever. If you do that, just make sure you got the right name of the school, the right club, the right city, because we do see that as well. And you just want to make sure that you're writing to the right school, the right information.
Well, that's a lot of great information. I truly appreciate that you talked about the fact that Penn State has that optional supplemental, but you cautioned and said, look, any opportunity, students, that you have to distinguish yourself from the thousands of other applicants, take it, right? Even though they're saying that it's optional, but if you fill it out, hopefully you're going to add to your overall application and you distinguish that. The Common App essay, right? That's an essay that you write once, brag about yourself, give insight into your personality, and you could use that for every single school. But usually a supplemental asks, why this university? And I think it's a great opportunity there to demonstrate your understanding of the university. Why do you want to be there? How are you going to contribute? And use it as an opportunity to show them that you really did your homework, as opposed to not answering at all, or worse, perhaps, coming up with one supplemental and you send it to the 6, 10, 12 schools that you're applying to, which probably is not going to add too much to your overall application, because it's not going to show that you took the time to really demonstrate your understanding there. So again, we appreciate that. Kate, anything you want to add in terms of the personal statement or those supplementals?
Well, Laurie gave lots of great information. I mean, I think just to reiterate some points, and yes, your regular essay, that's a general essay. It should be able to go to everyone. You don't want to have to edit each time you're submitting an application, but you want to be as specific as possible with a supplemental essay. I think a pitfall is definitely students have worked long and hard on their main essay and they spend much less time. So the quality is less. And if I think schools care equally, and some schools care more about their supplemental essays. So if that's your first choice school, you don't want to have spent less time on your supplemental essay. I think it's really where you can separate out applicants and see how much they've really learned about the school. So Laurie's reading that quote optional essay, and one student talks about the pretty campus and the great football team. Well, everybody knows that, right? But if they start talking about how they want to become one, Penn State has the world's largest alumni network, which is true. That would be impressive that someone took the time to learn something about the school that not everybody knows. And it's great if you visited and do take notes, take pictures on your phone. They all start to blend together because there are lots of pretty campuses out there. But if you end up having to write a supplemental essay, you'll want to refresh your memory. But you can get so much information on a website by talking to alumni who attended that school. Everyone can write a great supplemental essay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's so many opportunities to do your research, to come up with that awesome supplemental. And I appreciate what you said in terms of talking to alumni, because they're an awesome resource giving you insight in terms of things that maybe are not so easily found on a website. So we appreciate that. And Kate, I'm going to come back to you again here regarding some advice. What advice do you have for students who are struggling to get started on their essays? I speak to so many students who have a tough time with this. Are there specific brainstorming techniques you recommend or anything else?
I think we talked about a few suggestions a few questions ago, just taking some time to jot down notes. What do you love, or something that you're proud of, an accomplishment, someone or something you're grateful for. These are all coming from the prompts that exist. And you need to make some time for this, and you need to, but if the muse isn't flowing, you need to come back to it. I think we do all have ways to jot things down. So if you get a great idea, just make sure that you somehow capture that. Again, talking to family and friends, going to the libraries, or going on. There's a great resource on YouTube. There's a free version of the college essay guy. Go to the library, look up great Ivy League essays or their books and resources. That's not cheating. That's doing some research. That's getting an idea of what's out there. What have other people done? You need to create an original essay that's about you and that is your work, but it's not cheating to get inspiration from other sources. So I would say to, get some inspo by by seeing some other examples. Talk to people that who've already done this. What did they write about? And again, get ideas from family, friends, teachers, counselors.
Well, that's great advice. And there's two colleges, Johns Hopkins University, but also Hamilton College. They have something on their websites called Essays That Worked. And basically, it's a compilation of essays from students that were actually admitted. They got permission from the students to share them. And so, to Kate's point, it's really nice to see essays that were stellar, right? For lack of better terms, they're there on the website and it's free for you to see right there on the World Wide Web. So we appreciate that, Kate. Laurie, anything else you want to add in terms of advice for students who struggle to get started on those essays?
I really think Kate covered it so well. I do agree that the books in the library are such a great resource because sometimes you just have no idea, what do people even write about? Like, what do I write about? So just looking at, and there are so many books out there with sample college essays, Ivy League, Harvard, Stanford, whatever it is, just to see what other people write about. And there's a wide range of topics that students use. So it can just give you an idea of what would work, what might apply to you. And again, as I said earlier, don't focus on picking just one topic, write about a few, and then you can figure it out.
That's awesome. And another thing that's come up a lot in the podcast episodes are those additional information sections, which means that if there's anything else that students wish to share, you have that section which so many people neglect to use. So when considering, and Laurie, we're going to start with you, when considering the additional information section, what types of details are most beneficial to really help students and what should they include?
I mean, there's a wide range of things that you can include in the additional information. And there is also a second place for additional information, which I believe came out of COVID, but it's still there. And if there's something exceptional that happened, I mean, everybody was impacted by COVID, so no need to write about, you weren't able to get to school and you weren't able to see your friends. But if you had a really personal impact, illness in the family, first, healthcare workers, people that were front lines of COVID, that's something that really may have impacted you. Otherwise, that is one question that truly is optional. And I never really say anything's optional, but there's no need to write what everybody else experienced. On the other hand, the other additional information can really be anything. If you got involved in science research and you have an abstract that you want to submit, that's a great place to do it. If the 10 spots on the Common App are not enough places for you to put your activities that you're involved with, or let's say there's an activity that you are really deeply involved with, you have a leadership role, you've done it for so many years, you can't talk about it in one line. You can certainly write it. You started a business or you started a podcast or whatever it is. You can write all about that and add it to the additional information. You can also use that if you had like an extenuating circumstance that maybe impacted your grades one semester. It is fine to do that there. There are a couple of different places that you can do that. You can certainly ask your counselors in the counselor recommendation. That is information that is often included there. And that's something that if that's your situation, I also really recommend reaching out to the university directly, to the admissions person that handles your territory, to let them know, to make sure that it doesn't slip through the cracks, that they're aware of your situation. But, again, you can use it for so many different purposes.
Well, I think that's awesome. And it really goes to say that students, if there's something that you need to include and you don't include it, and maybe that thing is the reason why you're not in 5 different activities, for example, if you don't explain it, you're going to leave it up to the admissions reps to speculate as to why. So if to Laurie's point, if there is something that you need to include, use that section to create a comprehensive package of who you are throughout that application. Kate, anything you want to add on that?
It's such a great point to look at your whole application and think if there's anything missing, anything not explained, any trend on your transcript, anything that might raise a question. This is that perfect place for it. Again, generally things aren't optional. These are truly optional. Don't write about something that is not needed. But in that additional information section, I've had students send links to their art portfolios. I had a student send a link. Had been featured in a newspaper article. So there are some positive things, but quite often it's to explain grades. If it's not what you want to write your essay about, but we see those grades dipped, we do need to know why they dipped. We're able to sort of work around that a little bit if we know what happened, but how are we to know whether the grades fell because you just stopped going to class or they fell because you broke your leg in 4 places or
Hmm.
something really difficult was happening in your life? So just make sure that is covered somewhere, but as Laurie said, there are many different places. Just make sure it's somewhere within those application pieces.
Well, that's awesome. This is terrific. I really appreciate it. And, we talk a lot about student voice, and it kind of came up a little bit throughout the podcast episode already. But, Kate, I need to ask you, how important is a student's voice in the essay, and what tips do you have for ensuring that it comes through authentically?
We like to think we have good sense about this, and our spidey sense is pretty finely tuned to detect when well-meaning parents have had too heavy a hand in editing, when someone decided to grab something off the internet to use ChatGPT to, parents also sometimes hire people to help. You want to have someone read your essay, but you do not want someone else or a computer to write your essay. There are words that teenagers use and there are words that they don't use. You want to use are generally appropriate words unless you're directly quoting someone. But it just again you can tell. I always talk about a neighbor sent me her son's essay and I said, "Did you hire someone?" And I'm guessing that person was older. And she said, "How did you know?" Because the student's first line was that he and his friends were just horsing around. It's not something that my father used to say that, and he was born in 1924, so that was so, if students, if you've shared it, if someone's given you a suggestion, if it doesn't seem right to you, if it's not a word that you'd use, don't use it. Change it back to a word that you would use. I think it's a great idea to read your essay out loud, and if anything strikes your ear as being a little off, it will definitely strike our ear as being a little off. So we're not expecting you to be professors. Again, we want that example to be your best writing. We love paragraphs. I read one essay today and it happens every day. It was just one paragraph. It was hard to figure out where one thought ended and another began. But again, this is something that you'll be doing in college. It's great practice to write and then draft and to give yourself some time that you can leave it and come back to with fresh eyes, share it with someone else to get there. You may know what you were trying to get across. The person who wrote stock market and spelled it wrong knew what she was talking about. Anyone reading that essay would quickly pick up on that. So it's a great tool, but definitely be true to yourself and your own vocabulary.
Yeah, definitely be true to your own vocabulary. And I appreciate the different examples. You mentioned your dad, but someone also shared with me one time that they read an essay and they noticed that after each period, there were two spaces, which I know when I was in high school and grammar school or whatever, that's how they taught us. After a period, it was two spaces. Well, that's not so true nowadays. So if an admissions rep is reading it and they're seeing the two spaces after a period, after a sentence, that's a red flag that someone other than the 17-year-old wrote that essay. So we appreciate that. And, again, regarding student voice, Laurie, anything that you want to add?
That's so funny because the double space is definitely a giveaway, one that I'm guilty of. But in any case, no, I think just my best advice is to just have confidence. Nobody can write your story better than you. So there's no reason to go to the internet. There's no reason to hire anybody to have you are the best advocate for yourself. And then if you're a student who has been in touch with us, if you've emailed us. We kind of have a sense of how you communicate. If your essay is completely different than what we've seen in our communications, that's going to look a little strange. We don't expect you to write the great American novel. We just expect you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So just be confident, use your voice, tell your story.
That's awesome. Be confident, use your voice, tell your story. Another thing that I heard someone say that I just wanted to share here with the students in terms of keeping that authentic voice. Most of you probably have this thing called a cell phone, students. So it might not be a bad idea to actually read your essay out loud, but while recording it on your cell phone and then play it back and just listen to it. Is it what you want to convey? And someone gave some nice advice in terms of doing that to really help you create that authentic essay that really sounds like you. So I just wanted to share that piece here. I just remembered from one of the episodes that came up. So, Laurie, next question is for you again. In your experience, how do different colleges weigh the importance of essays compared to other application components like grades and test scores?
I would say for most universities, the first and most important thing that we're looking at are your grades. And at Penn State, that is by far the single biggest factor that we are considering. In fact, for us, all of the other pieces are quite frankly optional. I mean, we're test optional still. I don't know that we will be forever, but we are currently test optional. And so if your scores speak to your strengths, we encourage you to submit them. If not, don't. But the grades are the only required, the classes you took, the grades you received in those classes. Even though the essays are optional, and the reason they're optional is because we can't promise that we're going to get to every single one. You may be admitted based on your grades, and that's that. But there are going to be a lot of cases where we're on the fence, and that's where that is so crucial. Now, there are going to be other schools where it's going to play an even greater role. I think some of the most selective schools out there, they have most of their students meet the criteria academically. They're all top students. So all these other pieces are really what is making the difference. But, for us, it's definitely not the most important factor, but it is a factor. And we do have an honors college where it is probably the most important factor. Once your grades we're really looking at those essays. So even if it's not the general admission for certain programs, the essay could definitely be the thing that makes or breaks you in which decision you get.
Well, we appreciate that. Kate, anything to add on that one?
I think one of the best things about the essay is that it hasn't been written yet, right? It's still something that you can change. You cannot change your grades from ninth grade. You cannot change your grades from 10th grade. You can take a standardized test again, and many of us are test optional, but of course, if you have a great test score, that can be helpful. But this is something you have complete control over, and that should make you feel good. Not every essay moves the needle, but know that it can. There are times when the essay has changed my decision, where other elements supersede to some degree those grades. Of course, the grades are the most important, and be looking at the trend of the grades and the courses you've selected. But every single application element is important, and the essay is really just such a golden opportunity to just tell us more about yourself. And so I hope students understand that this is something that can still be changed. And so that's, I think, should make people feel good.
Well, I think that's such a great point, and you're so right. At the time of submitting your application, students, whatever you scored in terms of grades in ninth grade and 10th grade, frankly, whatever activities you participated in ninth, 10th, and even in 11th, those are things that are in the past. They can't be changed. They are what they are. However, the essay, that is one thing at that moment in time that you really do have full control over. So, as Kate and Laurie are indicating, that's something that you should feel good about. That's something that you definitely control as part of putting together your overall application. So, we appreciate that. And, Kate, I'm going to come back to you again, and we're going to talk about this thing called AI. I don't know if anyone has heard of it, artificial intelligence. And with the rise of AI tools for writing assistance, how do you see their impact on the college essay process, and what should students really keep in mind related to AI and writing those college essays?
We are seeing it. It is here. It's here to stay. We said it earlier. You need to write this essay. I Was questioned by someone recently. I was presenting at a high school with Laurie, and I said that I didn't think there was anything wrong with using AI for a draft. I don't think we can get around that. I tried it. The first time I tried it, I had to write a long, boring memo. It was really helpful I didn't like what it gave me, but it was really easy to rework it to make it my own. I think students can do that with an essay. What you can't do is submit what the computer wrote. First of all, we can put the prompt into ChatGPT also, and we'll see what we get. So, it also, there's never any soul when there's no personality. There's none of what you can infuse into your essay that, because the computer doesn't know you. It can give you a letter perfect essay. Sometimes we know because all the English grades are in the 70s and the essay is a thing of perfection.
Hmm.
And that seems a little hard to swallow. But look, it's here to stay. Use it as a tool, but do not rely too much on it. You need to change it enough to make that essay your own.
Well, that's great advice. Laurie, anything more to add in terms of AI?
I think Kate really covered it. The key is that AI doesn't have soul. Most of the essays we read are so heartfelt and they are so personal, and there's no way that, AI can do that. And use your voice. You're the best person to tell your story.
I love that. You're definitely the best person to tell your own story, and certainly AI can't do that for you. So, this has been a phenomenal conversation. It does lead us to the second to last question. I always love to ask this question. I'm going to start with you, Laurie. Is there a question I didn't ask or a related topic that I didn't bring up today that you'd like to share with us now?
Ooh, such a good question. I just think that, try to enjoy this process. I mean, that's really, it should not be stressful. I mean, I understand it's stressful, but I think at the end of the day, when students do finish their essay, even after all the stress and all the worry, they're really proud of it and they feel really good and they've told their story and it's just something that they feel they take a lot of pride in. So I think just, I would say, have faith that this will all work out and just try to enjoy it. It really does all work out. There are thousands of great universities out there. There's more than one that would be the best place for you to go. So just try to enjoy the process. And, as far as the essay writing goes, it is really not something that's there to trip you up. We're just really trying to get to know you. So just pretend you're having a conversation with us.
That's awesome. And Kate, how about you? Is there a question I didn't ask or a topic that I didn't bring up that you'd like to share with us now?
No, I think the questions were great. One thing I wanted to just remind students is that we know not everyone is a writer. I have a different expectation if you tell me you want to major in creative writing than I do if your major is software engineering. Not that software engineers can't be great writers. Of course they can be. But as long as it's a solid essay that you've done what you need to do, you've told your story, if you're happy with it, don't stress out. Most essays are good. They're not going to really move that needle of one way or the other too much. A great essay can, and a really poor essay, someone's looking like they're not ready for college level work, that could hurt you. So just remember that the do's, we talked a lot about the don'ts, but the cardinal rules are pretty simple. Laurie mentioned staying within that word count, 250 to 650 words. You don't have to go to the max. It's harder to write shorter, but be in that range. Make sure you're addressing the prompt. You don't want to be writing about overcoming an obstacle and not show that you made any progress towards overcoming that obstacle. The one thing I think that is worth mentioning, and it's tangential, but students have the memo about the essay. They know they need to pay attention to that and to write carefully. And then they get to the common application, those 10 spots that Laurie mentioned that you have to put your activities, and they are super careless. You don't need full sentences there. You have very little space, but I find more typos there, more just not filling it out. The students ignore it. And then I learn from the counselor that the student actually has a job and they're in clubs and they play a sport and the student just neglected to put something down. So I would say this is not the topic of this podcast, but also pay attention to that activity section because being really careless there is not putting your best foot forward.
Well, I appreciate that because we talk about it all the time, being mindful of the different parts of the application, what they are intended for, how they need to complement each other, and frankly, build upon each other, right? Without repeating the same information in multiple parts, which would really be a missed opportunity. So I appreciate you bringing up that portion of the application. This has been an awesome conversation, as I knew it would be. Unfortunately, it does bring us to the last question, which each of you are going to get a chance to answer. We're going to start with you first, Kate. What other advice do you have for students going through the college admissions process along with their families?
I'd probably give the same advice always. I think just it's back to being true to yourself, just understanding who you are and what you like, and don't worry what other people say. Try to visit schools. Don't stress too much. You can learn a lot about schools and know enough that you'd like to apply. But when you're visiting, when you're making that decision, just really listen to your inner voice. And if there's something you love about a campus, but you can't put your finger on it, you don't need to write an essay about why you're choosing a college, but you should know, you should feel like, yes, I can see myself here. So that is hard to put words to and to really define, but I really feel like students do get a sense, and I see them talking themselves into decisions because of what other people say, or because of a ranking or a very slight cost difference. And I just think that's a mistake. So as Laurie said, there's so many great schools out there. When you break down this process, it's really not that bad. And it's an exciting decision. This is a great college is a fantastic time where you learn and do so much. So try to be more excited than nervous about it. Just do everything, take it one step at a time, try to get those applications in early, and never forget that you can reach out to counselors at schools. We are always happy to talk to you. And our goal is to help you find the right college. We're not all trying to convince you to come to our schools. We want you to find the school that's really the best fit for you.
Well, Kate, thank you so much, not only for today's amazing conversation, but for now being on the podcast for the fourth time. You have been a mentor, a true inspiration, and I'm glad to call you a friend. Kate, thank you again.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way.
Thank you so much. And Laurie, back to you. What other advice do you have for students going through the college admissions process along with their families?
Definitely keep an open mind. Kate had such great points to keep in mind. And I think keeping an open mind when it comes to what colleges you're applying to. And also another thing that we didn't really talk about, but majors. You don't have to know what you want to do. I think students put a lot of pressure on themselves to know what they want to study. And some students do know what they want to study, and that's great. Many students don't know, and that's totally fine. What I do recommend, and especially, there are many schools, Penn State being one of them, that does admit by academic college, to explore, go on school websites and read just descriptions of different majors. You only know what you know. You are exposed to a lot in high school, but probably not the number of different majors that you will be exposed to in college. So take some time, go on websites, read descriptions, look at different career paths, just to get a sense of what's out there and what's available to you. It'll definitely help you with the process. And just like you shouldn't be applying to the same schools just because your friends are applying to those schools, you shouldn't be applying to the same majors just because everybody you know is applying for these 3 different majors. Think about what, and as Kate said, be true to yourself. Think about what is important to you. That's, comes with picking your school and figuring out the things that are most important to you as far as size and location and geographic area, whatever, like if you want to be in a city or in a suburb or a rural college town, just kind of get a sense of the things that are important to you. And there's no right or wrong. They don't have to be the things that are important to anybody else, but definitely take advantage of all the resources out there, all the information, and just make yourself as knowledgeable as you possibly can. And I'm just going to reiterate what Kate said. It is so important to know that we are here for you. Please reach out to us. We are experts in navigating our own application processes. So please ask us. We're happy to share. We like to say we're admissions counselors. We're not rejection counselors. We're trying to find reasons and ways to admit you. So reach out to us. We really are here to help you.
Well, they're definitely here to help you, which is why I'm able to put together so many podcast episodes, because amazing people like Kate and Laurie come on time and time again to help. Laurie, this is also your 4th podcast episode. I cannot thank you enough again for your leadership, mentorship, and just like Kate, I now call you my friend, and I really appreciate you both more than you know. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. We feel the same way.
It was our pleasure.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, and I can't believe this is episode 300. So the last thing to say to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all, best wishes, and looking forward to 300 more episodes. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.